Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. Um, this is sort of a proof of concept. I've been working on quote unquote like theory crafting like a new meta build where the Archon shards are concerned. I got my third Tau forged, and obviously I now have uh, three frames worth of Tau shards, or not Tau shards, Archon shards. So I really wanted to see, now that I have some flexibility, what exactly our new meta is going to be. So I was trying to figure out where I would start, and a lot of the new builds are going to be around that benefit the most are going to be around melee. Because just from process of elimination, the red Tau shard, which is the one that actually buffs you in terms of straight up power. Primary is status chance, and that's going to be used as a creature comfort. Though, to be honest, most of the meta builds, you're basically getting status chance by volume, and you're only using the galvanized mod for status chance. So it's not going to be game breaking. Obviously, things like the Convectrix can abuse the hell out of it. Definitely going to help. Running red Tau like 3 red Tau forged is going to do wonders on things that are like slash only weapons, where they rely specifically on procs. It's also going to help weapons where they might have incredibly strong crit chance, crit damage, and even doing like dual 60/60s and the galvanized damage mod, you might not have enough. So it can help you get over the hump. But that stuff only allows you to adjust your ratios to help the weapon that might be a little bit weaker. The crit chance on secondary, while very fun and can be definitely beneficial in allowing a secondary to get over into the next tier a little bit, or at least increase the weighting enough to where it's like relevant. Obviously, there's a pretty substantial difference between a weapon that has like 105% crit chance and one that has like 130, right? You're starting to increase further up that ratio. 105% is 100% chance to hit a yellow, with a 1 in 20 chance to hit an orange. And if you can get up to, say, like 130, all of a sudden it becomes 1 in 3. So it's beneficial a little bit to get out of like the single digits, like 105, 106, to say like double digits where it's like 110, 120, 130. It becomes more relevant damage. Now the difference is that there's a losing benefit to it. Going from 150 to 170 isn't that big of an increase. 180 to 190, not that big of an increase. But going from 105 crit chance to like 130 crit chance is a big difference. But it doesn't really, even with Tau forged, and you would have to slot most of your shards as secondary crit chance. Besides maybe Mesa, I don't see this really being a relevant build over, say, 3 reds. So by process of elimination, in terms of weapon platforming, it leaves us with melee, because a red Tau forged gives 37.5 crit damage on a melee. A second Tau forged gets you up to what is that, 53 and a half? So it's 37.5 plus 25. Sorry, 62.5. Well, that's a gladiator might, which means if you didn't want to heavily push into a specific area, you could then pseudo optimize your build and run gladiator vice, or obviously double down on the crypt. But if you're running gladiator might organ shatter, you would then have the option of running organ shatter gladiator vice, and that's a big difference, right? Especially if you don't have like arcane strike. So obviously the next step on this sort of like complete a build where there isn't very much overlap, what would the resulting weapon be? And due to the additional bonuses, all the other stuff you can throw on the weapon, I did the Innodem. Hell, I even went and bought a riven and started rolling it. I don't have a super usable build yet, but it at least proves the point. And when you see the damage, I want you to keep in mind when you see the raw damage, it's a dot build. Okay, I'm gonna show the build. Obviously, hit some nerds in the simulacrum, but I'm gonna do steel path. It hits 10 digits, or not 10 digits, 8 digits. Especially when you're charging the Incarnon form and you have to activate it so you hit the heavy attack. I've hit 40, 50 million. And I haven't even really included frame buffs. So there is no multiplicative frame buffing on this. So keep that in mind when you see this. So this is sort of a proof of concept. I'm not claiming it's min-maxed, but I did my best to try to not double up on anything. There's no organ shatter gladiator might. It's going to look weird to the newer players, but some older players are going to recognize the setup from old Ash builds. Because this is the first time I've ever had this issue where I have too many mod slots. I have so much free space on the build now. I'm practically going to umbral form of this weapon just to see how it works out. So basic rock. This is the standard one that I use. I helmethed on Warcry for attack speed. If you look at the speed increase, it's 57.6. This allows me to use the attack speed from the Incarnon bonus and the attack speed from the choice, where you choose 25% attack speed, and the bonus attack speed from the Incarnon form, plus Warcry, to have, honestly, pretty good attack speed. And if you'll notice, Arcane Grace, just being a rock, right? Adaptation, tons of armor, triple Umbra. So this is how the frame is buffing it, just for clarity. It's the attack speed buff to save space. So none of this is multiplicative. There's no breach surge, there's no eclipse, there's no roar. And to be honest, I don't think it needs it. If you notice, we did Arcane Fury, and there's a reason for that. I did not do Arcane Strike. The weapon in Incarnon mode, honestly, is fast enough. The stance Stinging Thorn is a very choppy, punchy stance. Because there's a lot of like double hits in the standing auto, and the slide attack, the little 360, is very quick on its own. It just doesn't allow you to cast it that fast, or hit it that fast, right? It won't trigger that fast. So the attack speed makes the animation a little quicker, but it was quick enough already. But it allows you to attack faster. I mean, obviously, big brain ideas only. More attack speed allows you to attack faster, but you'll see, because it ramps up, because there's no attack speed on the weapon. So Fury giving us base damage. We'll go to the weapon, And this is the build. It is rivenless. Now, this weapon is known for doing a ton of damage to begin with, and because of all the bonuses, maybe this is something DE is going to bring in more over time, where there's like a hardcore gimmick. They're talking about new tenant weapons. I would assume that means new Incarnon weapons, obviously, with the new expansion coming out. Not the single update, but the actual Deviri Paradox. We're obviously going to get new weapons for that. Maybe the gimmick thing is a new thing. Well, obviously that adds a ton of layers. You have 5 Archon shards. You have the Innodem perks. What I can't even remember what it is. The evolutions. So let's go over the evolutions. The base evolution, you don't have a choice in this one. Evolution 2 is attack speed. We need it. The weapon is slow on its own. Increase the range of aerial melee attacks by 0.5. Surprisingly relevant, and I'll discuss that in a second. This actually ends up being best in slot. Like, you actually need this for the build. Airborne melee kill, absolutely relevant, and I'm going to show you how to abuse this, because it's incredibly dumb. It deals with the Stinging Thorn stance, but there's actually a way to pretty regularly proc this, and it blew my mind. Evolution 5, there wasn't anything super relevant, so I just did this one. Collecting ammo helps with the combo counter, whatever. Okay, also, new core, dexterity, augers, the double auger. It is a corrosive radiation primer. No real reason, because I can get heat from my 2. And the idea of this build was, what would you end up if you didn't double step on anything? Because generally with like a slash build, you go double crit damage, right? Berserker, condition overload. And speaking of that, just to bring attention to it again, I have no attack speed, and I have no base damage on this weapon. It's all been outsourced to other parts of the frame. So I ended up with a dot build, because there's slash on the stance, that actually ends up with raw damage. Look at the total damage. 1278. So where are we getting our damage from? Because obviously it's a slash build, right? Well, this, I figured out how to regularly... Well, at least it was news to me. I figured it out. I don't even think I was the first. But I haven't seen anybody talk about abusing this. But this is easily proccable. And it's incredibly dumb. But I'll show you how to do it. It's a little bit of RNG, but it is so easy when you're getting mobbed. But you can regularly proc this. So 150 melee damage... and 180 from here. Is 330. If we divide that by 80 for condition overload, with IPS on the weapon, raw corrosive, and viral from the Panzer, and I even had room for weeping wounds, I am missing 7/8 of 1 proc. So if we do 4.125 divided by 5 minus 1, I am missing 17.5% of my damage in terms of raw damage. Now, obviously, that has to be justified, though, right? Because if it's a slash build, that's definitely a number you don't want going down. So here's the benefit. I now have space for Primed Fever Strike, Shocking Touch, and Sacrificial Steel. I'd say that's a trade-off. The weapon hits oranges, and its base status chance with no riven is 22. So if you have the shards, and you have Valkyrie, Valkyr, Helminth, and you have Arcane Rage, you can drum this build up. Now, this is obviously not hyper min-max, like obviously, you know, like a build showcase. This is just as far as I've got in terms of theory crafting. Hopefully, this helps any of you figure out like a way, at least it'll bring up some ideas for you guys to come up with your own builds. But this involves everything on the frame, including the shards. There's even shield gating. There's corrosive projection on the frame. So I still get corrosive projection. I still get shield gating. It's a health tank. The shield tank isn't cheap because it relies on the 4. But because I'm a health tank, and with the Panzer, I am picking up enough that I don't have to worry about it. And especially with the 2, though I am having to rely on the war cry augment, right? So I'm running around with a frame with a couple thousand armor. It's not quite a Valkyr, but it's getting close. I think I'm at like 3,200 armor, so I'm getting close. But this could potentially, I'm not saying it like this is the new meta, but this would be an example build where you really have to have gear to try this out. This is not something, absolutely not something a new player could do. So this is just sort of showing what's possible, I guess. So let's spawn up some baddies, and we'll do some deeps. Nice and simple. Alright, 281,000 at 5.6x. 687,000 on a headshot. Damage is getting juicy. We've got our Incarnon bonus damage. We've got Rage proc. $71,000 on a slide attack. And most important, reds on heavies. Alright. So this is our attack speed with the Incarnon buff and War Cry. It's not bad. We're getting away with murder because the stance has so many forced slash procs. I don't even have to try to get them. And also something that's super important. Reds on heavies. So about 71,000, not a big deal. But it's a lot of one-shots. Oh, I didn't keep it up. So let's prime and see how far this gets us. Corrosive primer, quarter mil, corrosive primer, 222, quarter mil, I think that was a 285 or a 385, 1.36 on a headshot, and most important, 3 mil on a red crit on a heavy attack. And keep in mind, it's a dot build. Now, me personally, I can't think of a dot build that has this kind of raw damage, because most of the time when you mod for something, right, with the exception of like a very, very specific riven, like almost god roll level, you have to sacrifice or frame buff your melee to make up. If you do a dot build, you need to frame buff with like corrosive damage from like Saren to get your raw damage up. And you have to make up for it with procs. And this is with a weapon with no damage mod on it, because the damage has been helmethed off. With the attack speed's been helmethed off. The flat damage is on the frame. We're even getting... Oh, and let me show you this. It's so dumb. So, block stance. You have to RNG it a little bit. It's a lot easier when you're getting swarmed, but let me see if I can trigger it. Okay, I did. Up in the top, this little hop, when you do the defense stance, right? Hold on. Okay, there we go. When you block, so you're holding the right mouse button. See that little hop? It counts as airborne. And so does... I haven't tested it with a bunch of frames, but I know it works on Nezha. The slide attack counts, especially when you're going over like uneven surface, which happens a lot. Like you're running downstairs, throw out a little slide attack, you're airborne for a second. When you're airborne, you get the extended range, and it'll help you hit the headshots further away. Even with say the exception of some Eximus, I'm not even going to say it's one of the problems with the build, because it burns them down so much faster. But there is an entirely different... There's an entirely different amount of damage between the Eximus and like every other unit. The Eximus still go down, and they still get one shot with heavy attacks. But I did notice that the raw damage from the weapon, I'm needing like 2 and 3 hits. And I know that sounds like, oh, first world problem. But compared to the rest of the build, where you're basically one-shotting everything, and keep in mind, this is a dot build. We even have a faction mod on it. I'll have to figure something out. Like maybe I'll put strike back on the frame and get raw damage from like smite or something, you know? So tweaks inbound, obviously, but this is sort of a proof of concept so far. But it's interesting because this is easily, with maybe the one exception of my Cronin Prime build with a very specific riven, this build doesn't lack anything. I've even got enough. I don't feel like I need to swap this weapon out. So I have armor shred from this too. Now, obviously, it's not as fast as, say, like a gas build. But if I wanted to, I could swap over to like an electric build and put shattering impact on the frame, or do like the 90% electric mod, and maybe do like a 60-60 mod for electricity, just to get the proc rate up. Because the Innodem, for all intents and purposes, obviously the crit chance is up a little bit. It's a little crit heavy, but the status chance basically guarantees you one status applied each time. So with one of the issues, this front loads your damage enough, and I think with the combination... Sorry, I was looking at that. The status chance is 22%. If you notice, our crit multiplier is 3.3, and that's because of the 2 Archon shards. It bumps it up. I don't even know what that was. But 22% chance doesn't guarantee 2 procs. So a little bit of status chance to maybe proc 2 things at once would at least allow me to lower the dispo on corrosive, because a lot of my damage is coming from straight up one bang. If I were to maybe be able to up the attack speed and maybe take off primed reach for an even bigger meme, and just solely rely on the Innodem bonus, which, by the way, for those that don't know, this weapon, the Innodem, gets a 40% attack speed bonus and a 3-meter range extension. And on finishers, I'm not using that. And gives you an additional 10% movement speed bonus while held, because it's a light weapon, right? So there's a lot to take in with this. If this is going to be the new meta where you have weapons with 5-6 things on each one, and then you have to combine it with shards, and then you have to combine it with helmets, obviously that's going to be the meta eventually. So this is sort of a proof of concept of what's eventually probably going to become just a standard build, what it might look like. And if it's the Innodem, it means no attack speed and no damage on the weapon. Like, no base damage, because you can outsource it to other places if you include arcanes. So, either way, let's do some Steel Path. Enough talking about that. Oh, also, real quick. This helps. The passive Phoenix Talons, physical damage and operator damage increased by 30%. It helps. So it's definitely there. And the Panzer is spreading spores, right? So let's see how this behaves. Because I tested it a little bit, and the damage is pretty nutty for something that doesn't have condition overload on it. I'm not going to jinx it and be like, oh, condition overload is dead, but for the first time in a long time on a combo counter build, I don't feel it's required. Because 4 statuses, if you're hitting something one time, condition overload doesn't even get the chance to proc. Condition overload requires you to hit something twice to be of any benefit. There are exceptions, of course. And they're pretty notable, like the Redeemer, right?
Predictable. As expected, Grenier have shut down the environmental systems, sending modified life support capsules. Use these to sustain your environment or attach code catalysts to begin harvesting.
Alright, so still building up the weapon. Give me a second. Alright, so we got our bonuses. 235, 26k, 8k, 4k. 18k. Nothing nutty. But when we add multipliers in, this thing goes a little crazy. Some random 2 mil headshot.
Activating it will buy you more time.
Actually, where are my Panzer spores? Oh, here they are. Alright, we're getting 200 Ks. Let's see if we can get a headshot. Nope. Quarter mils. Couple 100K.
Get ready for a capsule.
Obviously, it still needs to be balanced. So this is just sort of proof of concept. And it gets pretty easy to proc the extra damage from the Incarnon mode. Like that procced it, was a refresh. Alright, there we go. 1 mil hit on a headshot for the Eximus. Getting about 118k, so the damage is pretty decent so far. It's a lot of conditionals. And one of the things that's good about this weapon is the follow-through. So 55k, 200k, 230. Got a 2 mil coming down the little steps there. An 800k, but then we'd get like a 10k, right? That's probably on an elite unit with radiation. Or with alloy armor, right? Because one of the issues is obviously it's not trash mobs that kill you. But when you properly get everything primed, 600k, 700k, 200k, 400, but then you get like a 78, back up to 200, 91, right? Couple mil, not an issue. So the build needs work, but considering this is a dot build and it doesn't have attack speed or base damage on it, and it's a slash build, normally we would have to have like Organ Shatter, Gladiator, Might, and this is just kind of the slash proc. Okay. Let's see if we can get a slash proc. Come on. Okay, dude. Hold on, I'll get a slash pro. Oh, here we go. God damn it. Hold on. Oh, okay. Oh. I think that was 21k on a slash build. Or for a slash dot. Anything? Oh, no. Okay. There we go. Okay, 99,000. $166. Obviously the viral's helping us out. But most things, and the strongest part of the stance is the standing auto because of the headshots built into it. Come on, give me a good one. No. Slash proc, but the guy died. No. No. 55k, 52k. Okay. $12k on a heavy with primed enemies. So, pretty basic. Obviously there's a ton of room for improvement. Obviously would want to get those slash procs into the 6 figures for like a proper late game build. So might end up dropping down the raw damage with 60/60 mods. Maybe I'll be able to riven my way out of it, because right now one of the issues, and you saw me having it, the corrosive weighting on this is insane. Now it's helping me with raw damage, but I'm never going to hit a slash proc on this. The weapon is like 75% corrosive weighted. Now it's helping me with raw damage, but to be honest, I just don't feel like I need it. Even with no damage mod on the weapon. So this was just something I was experimenting with. Maybe this is going to be like a template I end up using. But this is the new sharding system, Helminth, Incarnon weapons, using the bonuses on the Incarnon weapons, with very few things, is something doubled up on. Like you get crit damage from the Archon shards. I put Gladiator Might back in here because I just straight up didn't have anything else I could put in here. That's where Conditioned Overload was. And I even had enough space with Sacrificial Steel. So with all of the stuff that's on this build, I had enough space to re-slot Gladiator Might and Sacrificial Steel back onto the build. Obviously, a nice damage increase. So this was 4 stats, maybe some math will come down. I haven't done it yet. Where Sac Steel gets taken off, Gladiator Might gets put back on, and Condition Overload goes back on. And then I do Arcane Strike back on the frame. But this is just sort of an example of very, very, very few things being doubled up on. And there's no downside so far. Obviously, the damage isn't tuned, but it's still nice, considering Condition Overload can't do what I just did. In terms of, like, one-shotting stuff, you would have to get a headshot, because Condition Overload doesn't proc off the first. It doesn't self-prime. It's on the second hit. So high attack speed helps a ton, right? And then on top of that, keep in mind with those heavy attacks when it was hitting for like two. I think there was one where I got like a 3 mil headshot with a red crit. The stance for Stinging Thorn is two heavy attacks. So nothing was strong enough yet. Obviously, at that much health, nothing would at this level. But when you start getting into like later game builds, like really doing level caps and whatnot, you're going to be able to take advantage of the fact that the heavy attack on this hits twice for the damage bonus. Um, so this is just sort of a status update. It's fun, but I'll probably have a build later. But this is just sort of like an early example where I messed around with it, got everything to apply in some order. I'm not even going to say correctly, but this is insane damage for something. I've never seen anything like this where there wasn't like a riven involved, and it was an older build when Blood Rush was 60%. I've seen Venka builds where Rage is used, so Arcane Strike, Arcane Rage on like an Ashe, right? I've seen builds like that. I haven't seen anything like this. So if any of y'all, if this stimulates a neuron and y'all figure something out with this, by all means, let me know. But this is just what I got so far. So this is the compare notes. Anyway, have a blessed day, y'all. Take it easy. Stay excellent.